The Eminence in Shadow Season 2 has just returned, and we finally get to experience more of the shenanigans of the greatest Shunibyo Kageno. And with how amazing the anime adaptation has been so far, we were introduced to several new characters such as the Blood Queen Elizabeth and the Vampire Hunter Mary. So in this video, I wanted to go over their character, and as usual, this video will contain spoilers for the anime and light novel, so here's a spoiler warning just in case. If you enjoyed the video and want more content like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel as well, it really helps. To start, who is Elizabeth and the story behind the Blood Queen? While Elizabeth was an original vampire called a progenitor, and it's unknown how long she has lived or how she was born, but according to the Wish of Calamity Aurora, progenitor vampires like Elizabeth had come from the blood of the demon Diablos after it split into two separate bloodlines. And out of all the other progenitors, she was considered to be the most powerful, but despite her immense powers, she was actually hated by many of her fellow vampires. That's because unlike the other vampires, Elizabeth doesn't enjoy the senseless killing and cruel behavior towards humans, but rather she wants to coexist with them. She never hunted or consumed human blood in excess and always just enough to keep her strength, but eventually she would completely give up on drinking blood as well. Her vampire followers, which included her second-in-command Mary, even supported her in giving up the consumption of blood, and it was for this reason that many vampires hated them. Now, because of their different beliefs, Elizabeth along with her followers had left their vampire home to establish their own small nation where vampires and humans can live and work together in harmony. It was also around this time that the golden age of vampires ended because humanity discovered their weaknesses, which I'll talk more about later. Basically, humans had hunted the vampire race to the brink of extinction, with even the progenitor vampires being killed as well. Elizabeth was the only remaining known progenitor to have escaped from this purge. But back to her nation, Elizabeth was able to maintain the peace between vampires and humans because when vampires give up drinking blood, they will essentially lose all their vampiric powers and traits, making them no different from humans, which made coexistence much easier since humans no longer have to fear vampires attacking them. Although for a progenitor like Elizabeth, even if she stops consuming blood, she will retain all of her powers and traits because the vampiric nature of a progenitor is much stronger than the average vampire. Her thirst for blood was also much stronger to the point where it can cause her immense physical and mental pain. But despite that, Elizabeth still continued to live without blood because her ultimate goal was to turn her nation into the Haven, a land where humans and vampires can truly live in peace. In any case, her nation continued to prosper thanks to her protection, and she even welcomed vampires who were being pursued by humanity with the condition that they have to give up drinking blood as well. But of course, there were occasionally some who refused to comply, and Elizabeth was forced to eliminate them. Sadly for her, the haven she built will eventually be destroyed in a single night due to the blood moon. That's because when the blood moon appears, it will not only amplify the power of vampires but their thirst for blood as well. This effect was especially potent on progenitors because, like I said, their vampiric nature was much stronger, so Elizabeth was forced to lock herself away, afraid of losing control. However, it was because of this moment of weakness that one of her subordinates, Crimson, who secretly wanted to restore the vampire race to greatness, gave her a taste of human blood. This caused Elizabeth to go on a rampage across the nation where she killed all the humans, while Crimson and his own followers killed the vampires that supported Elizabeth, with Mary being the only survivor. But that wasn't all. Elizabeth went on to destroy another 3 neighboring nations, truly earning the title of Blood Queen, and her rampage was only stopped when the blood moon subsided. After the ordeal, Crimson and his followers went into hiding while Elizabeth, who has regained her senses, was filled with immense guilt for all the suffering that she has caused, so she decided to take her own life. She then instructed Mary to permanently dispose of all her remains so that she will never be resurrected. However, Mary did not have the resolve to kill her beloved queen. Instead, her body was placed inside a coffin and Mary protected it for years until Crimson, along with followers, eventually stole the coffin. Mary was then exiled and Crimson will wait for the next blood moon, which will be taking place in another 1,000 years to resurrect the Blood Queen. It was over this 1,000 year that the Haven will eventually become known as the Lawless City we saw in the anime. That was basically her story, and we all know Crimson successfully resurrected Elizabeth in the anime, but before he could even witness her return, he was unfortunately destroyed by Shadow. And following her resurrection, she manages to regain much of her powers after drinking Claire's blood, then going on to fight not just Beta and the team, but Yukime, Juggernaut, Aurora, and finally Shadow, which was quite impressive considering she had only been newly revived. Now in regards to this, let's see some of her powers and abilities so that we can better understand just how powerful the strongest progenitor actually is. First off, she has most of the classic abilities that are associated with the vampire creature type, such as having inherently greater strength, speed, agility, and senses as compared to other species, like humans, elves, or even some Tyranthropes. A good example was how she managed to stop 665 and Rosa's attacks with only her bare hands, or the fact that in the light novel, she manages to send Shadow flying, granted he was weighed down by his gold coins. Another example is in the game Master of Garden because apparently, Elizabeth had once destroyed an entire mountain after Mary had tried to wake her up. I guess Mary was right, she really isn't a morning person. Furthermore, Elizabeth has the ability to fly as well, but in the presence of the Blood Moon, her speed can even match shadows, and like most vampires, she also possesses the stereotypical ability to turn humans into vampires or ghouls, a type of vampire familiar. In addition to those, another classic ability that vampires are known for is their natural regenerative capabilities, being able to heal from most injuries and diseases, although for a progenitor like Elizabeth, hers was at a more extreme level. She is able to withstand multiple fatal attacks and still easily regenerate through them, like being dismembered by Beta or being completely blown apart and impaled by Aurora. However, her strongest vampiric power was probably her blood manipulation technique, giving her the ability to control blood for either offensive or defensive situations. For instance, when she was fighting Shadow, she released a barrage of blood arrows to exchange blows with him and later even used a scythe made from blood to fight him. Also in the light novel, she was able to create powerful blood clones to fight Shadow as well. And that wasn't all. Another form of blood manipulation technique she used was called blood mist, and this can only be used by very old or powerful vampires, which allows the user to turn their physical body into mist form. But because Elizabeth was a progenitor, her proficiency and control was much better as she can turn specific parts of her body into mist. However, the blood mist technique is weak against powerful aerial attacks that can blow the mist away, and this will normally kill or severely damage the user at the cellular level. This technique later would even be adopted into Shadow Garden when Beta had somehow acquired blood mist herself after being exposed to Elizabeth's blood during their fight. And lastly, I think her most broken blood manipulation technique was that she could control or activate the blood within possessed individuals, causing their magic to overload like what happened to Claire, Beta and her team. The reason Elizabeth was able to use this power was because, like I said, progenitors share the closest connection to the demon Diablos, so it makes it easier for her to access or control this ability. Of course, her control over possessed blood still pales in comparison when it comes to the Witch of Calamity Aurora, as seen when she easily destroys Elizabeth with her own blood manipulation technique. Now that we understand the extent of Elizabeth's powers, I would also like to cover some of her weaknesses because she does share some of the stereotypical ones that vampires are known to have. The obvious one would be the fear of sunlight, and vampires will turn into ash when exposed, although it works differently for progenitors like her. What I mean is, even though she will still burn under the sunlight like any other vampires, but because progenitors have an inherent resistance to sunlight and coupled with their higher regenerative capabilities, they often just out-heal the damages, although I think it will still hurt. Another weakness is the classic stab through the heart with a stake, and it is quite effective against vampires even in this world. However, in the anime, Elizabeth actually did not turn into ash when stabbed because she apparently missed her own heart, and unlike normal vampires, it seems that for progenitors, even if they are destroyed, as long as their heart remains intact, they can be resurrected by simply using the lifeblood of a young man or woman blessed with magical energy as a sacrifice. Anyways, even though this isn't exactly a weakness, I do want to mention that in Master of Garden, Elizabeth apparently hates the smell of garlic but still enjoys eating garlic bread, which means in the Eminence in Shadow world, vampires don't follow this stereotypical weakness, which I found to be quite humorous. That said, those were the things about the Blood Queen Elizabeth. Let's move on to Mary the Vampire Hunter. So regarding her story, unlike Elizabeth, Mary was just a normal vampire and it's unknown when or how she became a vampire, but it's possible that she was turned into one at some point in time by Elizabeth. Also knowing the compassion of Elizabeth, Mary was likely turned into a vampire because she needed to be saved or something along those lines, and it would also be a good explanation why she was so devoted to Elizabeth. Now, Mary was the closest attendant of Elizabeth, often helping her to handle administrative and official government work, and also taking care of her daily routines like waking her up from bed, bringing her food, and so on. But besides that, like the other vampires that follow Elizabeth, Mary had given up the consumption of blood as well, although in the anime, she was forced to break this principle when Elizabeth went on a rampage during the Blood Moon in order to try and stop her queen. Sadly, Mary failed, and it was only after the Blood Moon ended that she found Elizabeth. When Elizabeth ended her own life, Mary decided to place her inside the coffin, and to honor her queen's dream of peace with humanity, Mary went on to eliminate any rogue vampires that threatened others. She eventually became a renowned vampire hunter, but she was found and defeated by Crimson, who will exile her from the newly named Crimson Tower. However, Mary did not give up and dedicated the rest of her life to one day end Elizabeth's suffering by truly destroying her body. This was why in the anime, she only tried attacking the Crimson Tower when she met Claire Cagano because she needed someone strong to fight alongside her. In any case, let's talk about Mary's abilities, which aren't a lot because she had given up drinking blood, so she no longer has access to any of her vampiric powers. Although it seems that she still retains some of her regenerative capabilities, albeit a much weaker version. But despite this, Mary did compensate for the loss of her vampiric powers by training and acquiring knowledge, because by the time of the anime, she was quite a talented swordsman and her complete understanding of vampires allowed her to easily hunt her own kind. The best example would be when she and Claire were fighting vampires inside the Crimson Tower. She was able to quickly teach Claire all the weak spots of vampires and they easily eliminated the enemies they encountered. Furthermore, Mary did showcase some vampiric powers when she consumed Claire's blood in order to fight the Tyrant Juggernaut. After taking Claire's blood, it allowed her to instantly recover her injuries and she attacked Juggernaut with a barrage of blood projectiles, but it was obvious that the intensity and strength of her powers were extremely weak, although it can simply be attributed to the fact that Mary likely hasn't consumed blood in a long time and she did not have enough time to regain her strength. With that said, there's nothing else regarding Mary as she was pretty much useless when everyone was fighting Elizabeth. However, it was nice that Elizabeth and Mary were able to have a happy conclusion to their story thanks to Shadow. Perhaps they will finally find and rebuild their haven again. But anyways, the anime is probably their last appearance because even in the latest volume 6 of the light novel, they don't have any more appearances, although it would be interesting if they are somehow brought back.
I am Recovery Atomic.
But yeah, that was everything on not just the Blood Queen Elizabeth but Mary the Vampire Hunter as well. And despite their brief appearance in the anime, what are your thoughts on their characters? Leave your answers in the comment section down below. Personally, I really enjoyed both their characters, especially Elizabeth. If you enjoyed this Eminence in Shadow character breakdown video, don't forget to leave a like or subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button as well for more content like this in the future. Thanks for watching and as always, stay safe everyone.